Donald Trump telling supporters tonight that he understands the tax laws better than anyone. Here to discuss, Betsy McCoy, the former lieutenant governor of New York, who is a Trump supporter, senior political analyst John Avlon, editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, and Jennifer Granholm, the former governor of Michigan, who is supporting Hillary Clinton. Good evening to all of you. Okay, this is what Donald Trump said last September in a primary debate at the Reagan Presidential Library.
I know people that are making a tremendous amount of money and paying virtually no tax, and I think it's unfair.
So, Betsy, today he says doing that was brilliant. Which is it?
Well, the fact is, since 1918, the tax code has encouraged investors, whether they're building big buildings like Donald Trump or opening a corner drugstore or buying stocks, to take risk. That's the purpose of this tax loss carry forward that Donald Trump used. He lost a tremendous amount of money, almost $1 billion, and he spread it out, the New York Times is guessing, over the following years. When I read the New York Times article...
I understand.
Let me just comment. There was such an innuendo of
Is it brilliant, as he said now?
I would say just complying with the law. And millions of people across the country use exactly the same tax provision. They apply it in the same way. They have a big loss one year, and they're allowed to apply it to future income to reduce their taxes. Is it a shame,
or is it brilliant? Where does he stand on this?
I would say it's just the norm. It is the norm. If you go to an accountant and you have a big loss, that's how it's treated.
But there's nothing normal, of course, about losing $900 million and getting a write-off for it. That's in every way extraordinary and unrelatable. The clip you just played is the key of it, right? Because he condemned this kind of behavior in a debate, because it plays well with primary voters. Now he's been forced to confront an uncomfortable reality.
Let's put this up, too, because I know you're talking about it. These are the times, at least a couple of them. These tweets, this is from April 2012 of September and September of 2015. Barack Obama, who wants to raise all our taxes, only pays 20.5% on a $790K salary. Do as I say, not as I do. And then he says the hedge fund guys, gals have to pay higher taxes ASAP. They are paying practically nothing. We must reduce taxes for the middle class. And then I'm looking at it, this is a story 9 times that he's talked about people taking advantage or not paying taxes. You have to admit, Governor, I'm going to get to you, that it does seem, this is for Betsy, that he's contradicting himself, that he's being a hypocrite about this. You must admit that.
Well, it certainly seems as if, at least in the issue of the tax loss carry forward, that's what the New York Times story is about, that the New York Times is really trying to shame him. There's all this innuendo that he did something, if not illegal,
why
at
are they
least
trying to shame him by
morally
showing
defective.
his tax returns?
No,
it's like saying
read the article. It says families that are in this income category often use this. They talk about it as cheating when, in fact, the New York Times itself didn't pay any tax in 2014 because they used a very similar tax provision. The New York Times is not
running for president.
That's right.
That's right. But are you suggesting that business people should be ineligible to run for president?
What I'm suggesting is that when you run for president, everything is out there.
Right.
And since the 1970s, every president has released, the person who's running for president has released their tax returns. That's part of it.
Issue.
That's part of the scrutiny that goes along with it. Hang on, and you can't say that because the New York Times has a story that happens not to be favorable to, or if they just put his tax records out there,
I wouldn't release
that they're out to get him.
No, because every day from now until Election Day would be another controversy about another part of his tax returns. Businessmen have tax returns that look different from politicians.
January of 2012,
it's
the right thing to do then. You live by the tweet, you die by the tweet. He's a hypocrite on this issue.
Governor, I swear I'm going to get to you. Don't worry about it. But the criticism from the Trump side is that, are you guys or him going into Hillary Clinton territory where you say the cover-up is worse than the crime, that she is not transparent
Well, I
enough?
heard Mrs. Clinton say, why isn't he paying his fair share? What is your fair share other than what the law says you owe? There's a question for you. What is your fair share other than what the law says you owe? Does anybody pay more?
How would you know that unless you release the tax returns? Governor, go on. What do you want to say?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I actually had brought the exact same article from Nick Confessori, which showed the 9 tweets that Donald Trump has made about how horrible it is that wealthy people don't pay their fair share, or how horrible it is that Barack Obama is spending taxpayer money on a speech, when in fact, well, guess whose Secret Service are paid for by taxpayer money? Guess whose roads are paid for when he drives his limousine on them by taxpayer money? Who's paying for that? We are subsidizing this billionaire. The guy who empties his trash can in the Trump Tower is paying for Donald Trump's cops that are patrolling the beat in front of Trump Tower. There is an issue here of just overall fairness, and ironically, the tax plan that Donald Trump proposes, which he says he can fix this, does not address this issue and only makes it worse, exacerbating income inequality, eliminating the estate tax, reducing taxes or eliminating them for capital gains. I mean, he is making this problem much worse, all the while he's mouthing how terrible it is.
Listen, and from this reporting, from the New York Times reporting, you can't say that he did anything illegal. They're not. That's not what they're saying. That's not what anyone is saying. But listen, Betsy McCoy she criticized the New York Times reporting. So did Rudy Giuliani. Here's what he said about the Times yesterday.
Don't you think a man who has this kind of economic genius is a lot better for the United States than a woman? And the only thing she's ever produced, there's a lot of work for the FBI checking out her email.
He's a genius and better than a woman. What's your reaction, Governor?
Well, I mean, first of all, how is the man a genius when he lost $1 billion in 1 year? Who knows what the other years are showing, number one. I mean, that statement about... I don't know. How do we know? You're alleging that, but we haven't seen his taxes. Who knows what he's been doing? If he's been living off of the largesse of the taxpayers by using the bankruptcy code to eliminate his debtors, or by claiming tax subsidies, going after tax subsidies everywhere, when we are the ones who are paying for them. So I'm just not sure. He's excellent at manipulating the code to his benefit, that's for sure. But you, Don, you were asking about Giuliani's comment there, and it's so hard. You know, I have no idea if that was a slam at women or just an off-the-cuff statement, but certainly I would say that the team on the Donald Trump side has not been doing very well with women, and certainly his past week is not going to do anything more to shore up his support among women.
Here's what the new CNN ORC poll released today shows. 73% of registered voters think that Trump should release his tax returns. 57% think Trump is hiding something. John, do you think that number will resonate with the campaign at all?
It should, but it won't, because this is a campaign driven largely by self-interest. And look, I think that's the larger point here. Look, what Donald Trump did, apparently, certainly not illegal. No one's alleging that. The question is whether it's ethical. Especially for someone running for president, especially for someone whose real estate empire has largely been built on what folks on the right would have traditionally called crony capitalism, getting a lot of tax breaks and deals at the benefit of taxpayers. So he's having it both ways. He's been shown to be a hypocrite in terms of tweets and lines he's made on the campaign. And it goes to the heart of a lot of the credibility of his candidacy, which is, I am such a successful businessman. I can do for America what I did for Atlantic City. Turns out that might have not have been such a good thing.
I don't know if any of you guys were on, but I remember saying several times months ago that why doesn't he just say, put out his tax returns and say, I know better than anybody else because look at what I was able to do with our tax code and it needs reform. And there's a soundbite somewhere, I've said it, but why didn't you guys ever say that, Betsy?
I'm going to give you credit for
why?
that.
But I mean, I'm just saying it was a perfect story for me, which
right.
leads people to believe that maybe there's something else or something bigger that is hiding in his tax returns and what was just uncovered. Donald Trump's charitable foundation getting him into some trouble with New York State Attorney General. Back with me now, Betsy McCoy, John Avalon, and Jennifer Granholm. So can I ask you about the response, Betsy, from the Trump surrogates? Because I said, I never thought that I would see Rudy Giuliani or Chris Christie or Betsy McCoy like doing cartwheels and backflips on television trying to explain this. Would you have used the same language, genius, brilliant?
I would definitely not have said genius and brilliant because it's such a widely used provision in the tax code. There's nothing genius or brilliant about it, but I would say it's an essential part of the tax code, and we shouldn't eliminate it because it encourages people to take risks.
Moving on, let's talk about Eric Schneiderman, the New York State Attorney General, saying that telling Trump, basically giving his charity a cease and desist.
Yeah, I got it right here.
What's your reaction?
My reaction is this: for the top law enforcement person in the state to sign on to the Hillary Clinton Campaign Advisory Board and then turn around and launch an investigation of her opponent is unethical. And he should have recused himself. Many people should be calling for his resignation because of this conflict of interest. And someone else should be looking into this. The timing of this is also suspicious. It could be that administrative errors were made. But I will tell you this. The same Attorney General identified $225 million in donations from foreign governments to the Clinton Foundation that were not reported in contrary.
Doesn't that negate your argument?
No, just a second. Contrary to New York state law, and did nothing about it. Did nothing about it.
So, John, I want you to respond to that, but let me just put up the statement from the Trump campaign, and then you can say, while we remain very concerned about the political motives behind AG Schneiderman's investigation, the Trump Foundation nevertheless intends to cooperate fully with the investigation. So go on, John. Do you
well,
think
look,
that
I mean,
he should
there's
be...
a lot of bad blood between these two figures. That's not a secret, particularly in sort of the arcane circles of New York politics. It is troubling whenever you get judicial actors seeming to have partisan motives or motives that could be impugned. That said, this is largely a problem of their own making. I mean, you know, this foundation, much vaunted, under the scrutiny that they could have anticipated, seems to have not filed very basic forms. And now, according to the Attorney General, they're going to have to open their books as of October 15th. Everything we've seen to date would suggest they're probably not ready for that kind of scrutiny in terms of both disbursements and payouts. And it's going to be a distraction for the campaign, but it's because they've resisted transparency for so long that they find themselves in this situation.
Politically motivated, Governor?
No, I mean, it's the facts are the facts. They didn't register. They're supposed to register. I think this actual failure to register is less damaging than the actual non-existence of a charity, meaning that this charity was not, in fact, a charity at all. It is a vehicle for funneling stuff to Donald Trump to be able to pay his legal bills, which is not legal, or to buy 6-foot portraits of himself that he's hanging on the walls of one of his resorts. These are, and not to mention the donation that he made to Pam Bondi to get her to stop investigating Trump University. This is not a charity at all. This is where he takes other people's money to satisfy his own vanity.
John,
that's part of the larger problem, I think, of what we've seen, is that Donald Trump's lifestyles basically seems to have been funded by a series of interconnected shell corporations through which he funnels a lot of money. So he can take a massive loss, take the deduction, have very low reported income, and still live like a king. And once this kind of transparency is put in place with the foundation, you could see a lot of really troubling, hard-to-explain things. A charity, a foundation that does not seem to be charitable, but instead seems to be devoted to self-aggrandizement and self-enrichment. If that's the case, it's certainly, you know, this is a problem of their own making. But massive.
Yeah, I don't think it's the case. Let me just point out that to give you a little bit of a parallel here, the Clinton Foundation failed to report 1,100 donations from foreign governments and entities that Mrs. Clinton's foundation was required to report under her agreement with the State Department when she took office there, and also under IRS regulations. 111 omissions. So they had to refile 4 years of taxes for the Clinton Foundation. And here is the one sentence in the cover letter that struck me as so apt here. Because foundations, like people, make mistakes, they are refiling 4 years of taxes. So I would
that what
say,
Governor Granholm just said?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say
we're all flawed. We're all broken.
But the thing
an
is,
administrative error here. I run a foundation in New York State. It's an overwhelming amount of paperwork. If they forgot to file with the charity office, I filed with it
Governor,
every
didn't
year.
you just give her that?
That could happen.
Listen, I'm saying that this is an administrative error. I get that, and it would be improper for Eric Schneiderman not to go after it because his office charities. What I'm going at is the underlying purpose, and to compare the Clinton Foundation with the Trump Foundation is so disparate. Tell me one person that the Trump Foundation whose life has been saved. Under the Clinton Foundation, 50,000 children every year in Malawi and in Kenya and Ethiopia are saved. Tell me one drug whose price has been reduced because of the beneficence of the Trump Foundation. Because of the Clinton Foundation, 11.5 million people now have access to AIDS drugs and to lower-cost malaria. This is not a foundation, the Trump Foundation. The Clinton Foundation has done remarkable work.
I would argue that the Trump Foundation also does good. They just made a sizable contribution to a veterans organization in Florida. And the trouble with the Clinton Foundation is that it was really used as a way of reaping in huge amounts of money from foreign governments, companies, and individuals while Mrs. Clinton was Secretary of State.
But do you deny the good the Clinton Foundation is?
Absolutely not.
You cannot
Absolutely not. Both of these institutions probably have their warts and their good points.
Is it fair to compare the two, because the Clinton Foundation is a much larger foundation than...
I think it
and has been rated 4 stars by all of the charity
review
organizations.
ripped off the United States government and the people of the United States by swapping favors in return for donations to that foundation.
That has not been proven.
Not
that is
something the
such a
Trump
bunch
Foundation
of
has ever
Donald
done.
Trump
And that is just an
campaign
accusation
talking
that is
points.
not
That is
been
such
proven.
a lie.
Yeah, I have to say
But,
that. It's
yeah.
an
That's right.
accusation. It
You
has not
bet.
been proven.
Yes.
You bet.
Thank you very much. We come right back. It has been a week of bad news for Donald Trump, but he has bounced back before. Can he do it?